Hey kids, this is Jurassic James, and on this Jurassic James Explains, we're looking at Archaeopteryx. Now today's request comes from a friend of mine named Jim Connor, and this is for you, Jim. He's a man after my own heart, and I really appreciate him, and he's given me asked for this one. I'm like, you got it, buddy. So first and foremost, geography. Uh, Archaeopteryx was first discovered, actually most of them were discovered, in the island of Germany. Now, on my globe, you're seeing that there's like Madagascar, Africa, and here's Europe. And Germany is where Archaeopteryx is found. Now, I said the island of Germany because right now it's on land and there's mountains. But during the Jurassic period, Germany was actually underwater. A lot of it was. And in fact, Europe as a whole is a series of islands, which is why when you hear of Jurassic Europe, you're hearing plesiosaur, ichthyosaur. These guys are swimming around because sea level's higher. There's a lot of islands popping up here and there. That being said, let's look at the animal itself. Again, we have our first one. My first Archaeopteryx was this one from Bullyland. Bullyland is a company. I'm not sure if it's still around, but if you see these older models like this, it's really cool on eBay and so on. So this one has all the parts. I was super excited because it was my first Archaeopteryx fossil, or sorry, first Archaeopteryx model. And one thing I want to point out as far as the parts go is that if you look at the feet, there are three toes facing forward, and there's one like the dew claw facing back. Now the difference here is that for most predatory dinosaurs, theropods, they have the three fingers, three digits going forward, like a dew claw. Like there you go, the three going forward and dew claw on the side. So we're seeing that in this guy too because it's it's very dinosaurian. The only thing I'm concerned about is that the actual toe like faces backwards, and the importance of that is that most likely what's going on is an engineering thing where the model has this flat like little green soldier army man base kind of base to stand on and balance, and they're probably just doing it that would make it simpler instead of having another part sticking out. But there have been studies done on Archaeopteryx skeletons and scans of them and looking at measurements, and they did not have toes like parakeets were climbing. So that's kind of been a host of debates on whether or not they were in they were in trees and they learned how to glide down or they learned how to climb. Their feet are designed really to grip that way. But again, modern birds have the same design too. So the big deal with Archaeopteryx in general is that it's what we call an icon of evolution. And what I'm saying is in 1861, the first fossil Archaeopteryx, well, what we think is Archaeopteryx, is found. It's a single feather. And the big deal with that is we have found, history has seen many fossilized, like here's this Gastornis, say a terror bird or one of the astro dinosaurs, large birds known. The idea is that we see these skeletons and we knew they were giant birds, right? But Archaeopteryx in the late Jurassic, about 151 million years ago, they saw a feather that old. It was like, wow, it's the first feather. So the name Archaeopteryx means ancient wing or ancient feather. So the idea is that if the first time at that time we had seen fossils, not fossil feathers, the interesting thing with this was about 2 years earlier from that discovery, Charles Darwin published The Origin of Species. And for many people who were against his publication, they said, well, it's just convenient that you have this idea of evolution and they find a feather that's really old. It kind of shows these weird traits. The big deal with that was Darwin, what the brilliance of what Darwin did was that, I mean, sure, he had found some fossils in South America on his trips into Galapagos, but the idea was he saw the natural world and he said, these birds and reptiles and mammals aren't just randomly created in these different areas, that one leads to the other or one connected to the other. And the fact that he was predicting that there was some ancestry between like bird and a reptile, and then they find a few years later a bird-like thing with feathers, indisputable feathers, and it has a bony tail reptile. Now, when you see birds' tails, they do have caudal vertebrae, little tail vertebrae. They're very small. They terminate very quickly, and most of what you see in a bird's tail is really just feathers. But this has a bony, lizard-like tail, and birds today don't have teeth. And Archaeopteryx has very clear teeth in its skull. So those are traits that were transitional or between bird and reptile. And the term my mentor, Mr. Hobbs, always say is mosaic evolution. Like a mosaic of tile, different little individual tile make one giant picture. This animal has both reptile and bird traits, so it's a mixture. So these iconic or icons of evolution, as I call them, are important. Guys like this guy, of course, for Jurassic bird reptile. Tiktaalik has features from amphibians and fish, even though it's really a fish. Lucy has these features that are, from other apes to hominid. So like these animals that transcend just like another fossil, they're the ones that people know about in the zeitgeist. They're aware of it. I call them the iconic fossils, like the Beyonce of fossils. So like everyone knows what they are. They know they're aware of them. So Archaeopteryx is it's among that league, right? So this model shows everything. I mean, the feather color at the time of discovery, we didn't know. We have no idea. So this is a very nice model. It shows all the parts. Oh, also the hands have these claws in them. And if you go to KFC or Popeyes or Church's, whatever your brand is, look at the bird wing. It has like the, 3 little fingered nubs like this, but they don't have claws on them. So that's something that we see that, again, is showing this, like, this is straight from the dinosaur bird connection area, right? My next model, which actually the next two models at work at the museum, the leads, the floor managers, we had a Secret Santa, and my guy Ernesto actually got me these two. I mean, what do you got by Jurassic James? You buy him dinosaur models and fossils, right? So here we have an Archaeopteryx again. This is from the company. It says 2014. This is from Schlee. Sorry, Papo. Sorry, and Papo is known for being one of the. I wouldn't say. I mean, it's high end. It's more expensive sometimes, but they're more detailed. So like, there are some models of these things that are way, way more expensive. Like that. Papo's like the nicest of like the affordable kind for the average person, right? What's really fun about this one is it has all the major parts. There's the three tails going forward, the dew claw on the side, the big feathered tail. There's like 11 specimens known for Archaeopteryx. Only 2 species that are generally recognized. Everyone who found parts of them often gave them different species names, but there's like 2 that are really recognized today. Everything's really cool about this one. The feathers on the on the head, everything. It's really, really accurate, very nice. Little side note: if you saw Jurassic Park 2, Jurassic World, there's these little green guys called compies, compsognathus, the proper term. These are so. This is also a Papo model. These are so close related that they actually found one and did into the feathers and thought it was a compy. So these are like the same strata, same time frame. So the idea is that it shows that this, without feathers, it looks like this dinosaur. So the idea is that that's really showing the bird dinosaur connection, because there has been many arguments on whether or not Archaeopteryx evolved initially from dinosaurs, or if it evolved parallel to dinosaurs, or from a different group altogether. It looks like dinosaurs, like convergent evolution. Those are all things that are being debated back and forth. And it kind of this model, these two show that similarity there. If you give them feathers, make it more of the different body stance, it would look very similar. It's like a shave Archaeopteryx, basically. So the next one I have is from, if I remember, it was Safari. And when I first saw the claw going up like that, I remember just getting annoyed, because there's this term I use called raptor fever, where dromaeosaurs or raptors have been known since like the 1920s, right? We've known about these raptoroid dinosaurs. But in 1993, when they get really popular because of Jurassic Park, so there's all of this like pop culture love of raptors and how they're awesome. I remember reading an article once, and they were saying maybe raptors like caused the extinction because they were so smart and all that. And it's like they weren't like, they were some of the smarter dinosaurs, but they weren't like Einsteins. They're not like humans. We're smart to destroy ourselves, So there have been papers going back and forth wherein some look at the foot and said that the claw didn't go up or held up like a dromaeosaur raptor. And again, dromaeosaurs are the raptors. So here's a velociraptor. They don't make dromaeosaurs I'm aware of, so I'm using it as an example. So in general, it has the same design. The difference is the feathers on a velociraptor are smaller. They can't fly. Archaeopteryx, whether or not it can fly, is a debate. This is really interesting set of PhD work. Whether they measure the wings, they do calculations on whether it can glide or fly or powered flight. This is going back and forth a lot. But the main thing is this animal isn't just like walking on the ground. Many birds today spend a lot of time on the ground, even if they can fly. But the thing is, whether or not they were going from tree to tree, we don't know. But the big picture here is where Archaeopteryx lives, it's a bunch of islands, archipelago. So it's not like it's in this dense redwood-looking forest. It's in these islands, it's like tropical islands. Think of it kind of like the Bahamas, but again, in the Jurassic, there are no flowering plants, no coconuts, kind of thing. So they're maybe climbing trees and jumping down or gliding down. That's their lifestyle and environment. That's also been one of the hypotheses of why the compies were so small, because islands tend to have smaller animals, and the idea is that Archaeopteryx may have just been smaller because the environment called upon that. So the last thing I'll point out with this particular model is the feather color. So when people ask me what color these animals are with skin, we are not sure yet. It can be scans done, and they can tell that some animals, some dinosaurs, are darker on top, lighter on the bottom, which is not unusual because we see it in many animals today. But with feathers, there are a couple of holdups. So, for example, a spoonbill, which I saw one the other day, and I got really excited in the car. A spoonbill or flamingo, they have white feathers, and they eat certain crustaceans, and they turn them pink, basically. A blue morpho butterfly. The light hits it and it shines back iridescent and makes this blue hue. But for those things can't really fossilize, essentially. But when it comes to dark feathers like black or dark red, there's a certain pigment actually in the modern bird's feather. So with there only being like 11 or 12-ish Archaeopteryx skeletons known, no one's wanting to break them open or harm them. So they're scanning them, and the scans are looking at the feather. They're seeing very similar pigments like that. So it's implying that at least the first feather in 1861 had some kind of black or dark color. It doesn't mean the entire thing was black. It doesn't mean that it could have been certain parts of it. We don't know for sure. But in general, we're seeing that color pattern. So for this guy and Microraptor, the feathered dinosaurs, we're just trying to figure out their color pattern. But again, I would still say take it with a grain of salt. Like, don't entirely be like, well, it's clearly only this color. It's science. We're still refining it. Which is another thing with the Archaeopteryx argument, is that when Darwin's like, here's proof, or what we're seeing is evidence of transitional species, humans tend to not like changing their minds. And what I'm saying is, particularly for politicians, people call people flip-floppers. And the idea is that if you're a flip-flopper to me, if your ideas are whatever everyone else wants. Like, you want this, I'll do that. If you want this, I'll put the thing, I'll do that. But in science, it's not really flip-flopping when you have some evidence and you believe and understand that, and you find new evidence that's just otherwise, that's better and more refined. That's not flip-flopping, that's changing your ideals because you have new ideals. It's your idea, but you have new evidence to suggest that. So that's one of the things to point out too. But even in the 1900s, people have been arguing that Archaeopteryx was a forgery, or that it's so coincidental it was discovered after Darwin's book came out, and that's like a whole thing I don't want to touch. But the last one I'll show you is on the Strand. There's if you go to Galveston on the Strand, it's called Plan the Strand. It's a toy shop, and they have like these little packs with like a bigger dinosaur, a smaller dinosaur, and the smaller one in this case was an Archaeopteryx. And I was like, one more for my collection, of course. This guy kind of retrograde. It goes back to this design where this was on a branch for balancing, of course. Again, it's more of an engineering thing. But the only thing I would say is not the best. That what these other ones have that I like is the claws are going kind of out like this. This one's claws are going forward, like an attack thing. I know looking at many birds, the hands move more like this today. And of course, the earlier ones, look at the fossils Archaeopteryx, it implies the same thing. But again, looking at the way the arms design and the size of the wings, we're not sure how they're flying, but they're being found like in this shallow water limestone. So one thing to point out is the facies, spelled Facies, facies is the rock material is sand. So the fact that there's layers of limestone, you find Archaeopteryx in it. Well, they're not marine animals swimming around, Although there is one hypothesis that they may have run on the water, like the basilisk lizard. That's one idea. But the idea here, that I wouldn't describe to that, but I have to report it. But the idea that they are clearly going over the water at some point and then falling in and fossilizing. And so if they're not doing powered flight, they're at least gliding or catching thermal something. I don't know. But in general, that is Archaeopteryx. There's more to the story, of course. It's a very famous fossil, but the video should be less than 15 minutes. So I'm trying to make that a trend. So that's why I'm doing this as Archaeopteryx Part 1, because I want to give time to add more stuff later on, more detail if you want that. Let me know if you do. Subscribe, comment below. By telling me what you want, I can do it, and I'm really interested, because this is not a paid channel at this time of this filming. Just tell me what you want to talk about. I'll go over it. But next week, I want to show you something, a surprise. I actually ordered something from Dinosaur Park and my friends from Bastrop. So next week, I'm going to do over that dinosaur. I'll tell you the secret. It's the Spletosaurus, a Tyrannosaurus cousin / ancestor, possibly. I'm going to open it and then go over the animal because it's a new one for me and I'm really excited about it. That being said, thank you guys very much. I'll see you guys next week. And I really appreciate you tuning in. And again, if you think more people should see this, you should share and subscribe and click those comments and likes, etc., etc. Thank you very much. See you guys later.